can still see my mother's face when Clara said the words. We were sitting in their dining room, the one with the oversized chandelier Linda bought after their kitchen remodel, the kind that's supposed to look expensive, but just looks heavy. My father sat at the head of the table in his usual spot, fingers laced together like he was about to lead a board meeting he had no business running. My mother perched beside him, spine straight, chin lifted in that particular way she has when she thinks she's about to win something. Clara sat across from them, a leather portfolio open in front of her, reading from a document in that flat, professional tone property managers perfect when they're about to ruin someone's day. Late fees will accrue at a rate of 5% per day after the 5th of each month. Automatic payment enrollment is mandatory and must be completed within 7 business days. The landlord reserves the right to inspect the property with 24 hours written notice. This is ridiculous, my mother interrupted, her voice climbing into that register she uses when she's about to demand to speak to someone's manager. We've been here for 6 years. We've never missed a payment. You're currently 14 days late on this month's rent, Clara said without looking up. My father's face did something complicated. We've had some cash flow issues, but we're getting it sorted. Which is why the landlord is willing to retain you as tenants, Clara continued, sliding another sheet of paper across the table. Provided you agree to the revised terms, rent will increase to $28.50 per month, effective immediately. You'll also need to settle the outstanding balance, including late fees, within. $28.50, my mother's voice cracked. That's who the hell does the landlord think they are? We've been model tenants. We've maintained this property. Actually, Clara said, and I watched her pull out another document with the calm precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The property inspection from last week noted several lease violations. Unauthorized paint in the master bedroom. A shed erected without landlord approval. And, she glanced at me for just a second, there's also the matter of the complaint filed by one of your tenants. The room went very still. My father followed Clara's glance. His eyes landed on me, sitting in the corner chair I'd deliberately chosen, the one where I could see all of them but stay out of the direct sightline. I hadn't said a word since I'd arrived. Hadn't needed to. What does she have to do with this? Linda's voice was sharp now, confused. Clara aligned the papers with her thumbs, perfectly neat. The landlord became aware that you've been renting a secondary property and recently attempted to evict your tenant without cause. Retaliatory eviction is illegal in this state, Mrs. Pearson. The landlord of that property filed a formal complaint, and when this property changed hands, the new owner requested a full review of your lease history and financial reliability. Changed hands. My father's voice was quieter now, wary. What do you mean changed hands? Twin Oak Properties sold this house 4 weeks ago. Your new landlord is Meridian Holdings, LLC. But, Linda was shaking her head, we would have been notified we have rights. You were notified. Certified letter sent to this address 3 weeks ago. You signed for it. I watched my father's hand move instinctively to the pile of mail on the sideboard. The pile he never opens because he assumes it's all junk. I could almost see the moment the dread started seeping in. So who is it? Linda demanded. Who bought the house? Clara looked at me. I met my mother's eyes and let the silence stretch for just a beat. 2. I did. I don't think I'll ever forget the sound my mother made. Not quite a gasp, not quite a laugh. Something broken in between. What? I bought this house 4 weeks ago, I said. My voice came out calmer than I expected. Flat, clinical. I also own the property you've been trying to evict me from. The one I've paid rent on in full every single month for 3 years. The one you entered without notice. The one you just tried to kick me out of to teach me respect. My father's mouth opened. Nothing came out. You're our daughter. My mother started, but I cut her off. I'm your landlord, Mom, and you're late on rent. Let me back up. 3 months earlier, I was sitting on the saggy IKEA couch in the living room of the house I rented from my parents, holding a piece of paper that made my hands shake. Not from fear, from something colder. The letter was printed on cream cardstock, my mother's touch, always obsessed with presentation, and folded into crisp thirds. Formal, impersonal, like I was a stranger and not the daughter who'd lived under their roof for 18 years. Dear Emma asterisk, after careful consideration, we've decided to adjust the rental rate on the property at 1247 Maple Avenue to better reflect current market conditions and the true cost of property ownership. Effective May 1st, your rent will increase from $1,200 per month to $1,700 per month. We understand this may seem sudden, but we believe this is an important step in teaching you financial responsibility and respect for property owners. Consider this a valuable life lesson. The word asterisk respect was underlined, twice. I didn't get the letter in the mail. My mother delivered it in person on a Thursday evening, letting herself in without knocking, something she'd always done, despite the lease I'd signed that explicitly said otherwise, carrying it in one hand and a Whole Foods bag in the other. I brought you some of that grain salad you like, she'd said, breezing past me into the kitchen like she owned the place. Which technically she did. She set the container on the counter and turned to face me, arms crossed, that expression on her face I'd known my whole life. The one that said I'm about to impart wisdom and you're going to be grateful asterisk. So, your father and I have been talking, she started, and I already knew I was going to hate whatever came next. And we've realized we've been doing you a disservice. I just looked at her. We've been letting you rent this place for asterisk below market value, sweetheart. It's nearly 1,700 square feet, updated kitchen, good neighborhood. Do you know what places like this go for? 1,200 is what we agreed on, I said carefully. And that was generous, too asterisk generous as it turns out. She slid the letter across the counter toward me. You're 31, Emma. You have a good job. It's time you learned what things actually cost, what it means to budget, to prioritize, to respect my landlords. I finished, scanning the letter. Exactly. She smiled like I'd finally understood the lesson. I knew you'd get it. This isn't punishment, honey. It's us helping you grow up. My father appeared in the doorway then, hands in his pockets, that sheepish but firm expression he always wore when he was backing my mother's play. It's a tough world out there, Emma Bear, he said, using the nickname I'd outgrown 15 years ago. Your mom and I, we just want to make sure you're ready for it, that you understand how to handle real responsibility. I looked at him, at his new Apple Watch, at the keys to the Tesla they'd leased 6 months ago, hanging from his belt loop. Are you having trouble with the mortgage? I asked. The question landed like I'd thrown something. What? My mother's voice went up half an octave. No, this has nothing to do with we're fine asterisk, Emma. This is about asterisk you. Okay, I said. She blinked. Okay. Okay, I'll pay it. I watched confusion flicker across her face. She'd been gearing up for an argument, I could tell. Ready to defend, to lecture, to steamroll. My compliance disarmed her. Oh, well, good. I'm glad you're being mature about this. Is there anything else? I asked. No, she picked up her purse, suddenly eager to leave now that the confrontation she'd been bracing for hadn't materialized. I'm proud of you, honey, for stepping up. They left. I locked the door behind them. The lock I'd installed myself after the 3rd time they'd let themselves in while I was in the shower, and stood in the small entryway of the house I'd turned into a home despite its cheap fixtures and builder-grade cabinets. I read the letter again. Respect. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Looked at the automatic transfer I'd set up 3 years ago, $1,200, first of every month, never late, never questioned. I updated it to $1,700 and set it to process on May 1st. Then I opened the photo app and took a picture of the letter, front and back. Then I sat down and let myself feel it, all of it. Here's the thing about my family. Money has always been the language they speak when they don't know how to say, I love you. Or when they want to say, you're not enough, but need it to sound like guidance. I'm the youngest of 2. My brother Kevin is 3 years older, a sales manager for a mid-tier logistics company, the kind of guy who posts LinkedIn inspiration quotes and calls it networking. Kevin got his college paid for all 4 years, plus a car, plus an apartment stipend. When I graduated high school, my parents sat me down and explained that they'd done some thinking and decided that paying for Kevin's school had made him soft. "We're not going to make that mistake with you," my father had said, sliding a packet of student loan information across the table. "This will teach you the value of your education." I took out $63,000 in loans. I worked 3 jobs. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in finance and got hired at a commercial real estate firm before I even walked at commencement. My mother told her friends I was doing something with numbers. When I made analyst, she said it was cute. When I bought my first investment property at 26, a duplex in Cleveland that I'd researched for 8 months, financed through an LLC, and rented out for positive cash flow within 6 weeks, my father laughed. Not a mean laugh, worse, an indulgent one. "Let's see how long that lasts," he'd said, patting my shoulder like I was a kid who just announced she was going to be an astronaut. Kevin bought a jet ski that same year. They threw him a party. I moved into my parents' rental when I was 28, after a breakup left me technically homeless and emotionally gutted. It was supposed to be temporary, just a few months while I regrouped, but the rent was fair, or so I thought, and I was traveling for work half the time anyway, so I stayed. They never let me forget it was charity. Never mind that I paid every month on time, via automated transfer they never had to think about. Never mind that when the water heater died, I replaced it out of pocket because my mother sighed and said, "Well, I suppose we could get someone out there, but it's so expensive." Never mind that I patched the drywall, replaced the broken blinds, and deep-cleaned the carpets they'd left stained with God knows what from the previous tenant. It was still their asterisk house. They made sure I knew it. They let themselves in whenever they wanted, borrowed my tools without asking, scheduled repairs without telling me, so I'd come home to strange men in my living room. When I got promoted to senior analyst, a title that came with a $20,000 raise and a corner office, I texted them the news. My mother replied, "That's nice, honey. We're at Costco. Can you pick up milk?" Kevin got promoted to regional manager 2 months later. They took him to Ruth's Chris and posted about it on Facebook. I stopped expecting them to see me. It was easier that way. But I didn't stop seeing them. I saw the new furniture, the kitchen remodel they paid for in cash, or said they did, the Tesla, the vacation to Italy they documented in 67 Instagram posts. And I saw the other things, too, the things they thought they were hiding. The way my father's jaw tightened when my mother bought another handbag. The envelope from the bank, marked urgent, that he shoved into a drawer when I walked into the room. The phone call he took on the porch, voice low and tense, using words like extension and forbearance. I'm a financial analyst. I'm trained to see patterns in data, to find the story the numbers are trying to tell. And my parents' numbers were screaming. The first payment at the new rate processed on May 1st. $1,200 became $1,700, just like that. I watched the transaction clear on my phone while sitting in my office, looking out at the city's skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows my parents had never seen. I took a screenshot, saved it to a folder I'd created that morning, 1247 Maple documentation. My mother texted me 3 hours later, "See, I knew you could do it. Proud of you for stepping up, Red." I stared at that heart emoji for a long time. Then I opened Zillow, not to look for apartments, to check the rental comps in my neighborhood. $1,700 for a 3-bedroom with no garage, builder-grade everything, and a furnace that sounded like it was trying to summon demons every time it kicked on. High by about $300. I added the comp data to my folder. Over the next 2 weeks, my mother's campaign of life lessons intensified in ways that would have been funny if they weren't so perfectly on brand. She started sending me Zillow listings. Not even good ones, shitty 1-bedrooms in bad neighborhoods, apartments with carpets that looked like crime scenes. Each one came with a little note. Affordable. Great for starting out. Time to stand on your own 2 feet. I was 31 years old. I'd been standing on my own feet since I was 18. But sure, Mom. Thanks for the listing for a studio apartment 40 minutes from my office that costs the same as what I'm paying you for 3 times the space. My father got in on it too, in his own way. He called me one Saturday morning early, before 8, which he knew I hated, and launched into a speech about building equity. You're just throwing money away on rent, Emma Bear, he said, voice full of that condescending patience he uses when he thinks he's teaching me something. At your age, you should be thinking about buying, establishing roots, building wealth through property ownership. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, phone on speaker. You're right, I said. I know it seems overwhelming, but your mother and I could help you understand the process. I own 3 properties, Dad. Silence. What? 3 properties, a duplex in Cleveland, a single-family rental in Austin, and a condo in Phoenix. I bought the first one 5 years ago. More silence. I could practically hear him recalibrating, trying to figure out if I was lying or if he'd somehow missed this. Well, he finally said, that's why didn't you say anything? I did, you laughed. He made a sound like he was going to argue, then didn't. Well, that's good, honey, that's real good, but maybe you should think about buying something here, for yourself, instead of renting. Maybe, I said, and let him hang up first. I added a note to my documentation folder, father unaware of investment portfolio. Advised me to build equity while charging above market rent. The breaking point came at a family dinner the following Sunday. I almost didn't go, but my mother had texted me 6 times and called twice, and the last message said Kevin was bringing big news, which meant I'd never hear the end of it if I didn't show up to perform my role as supportive little sister. Their house, the one they lived in, not the one they rented to me, was exactly what you'd expect from 2 people trying to look wealthier than they were. 4 bedrooms in a suburb with an HOA that sent violation notices if your mailbox was the wrong shade of beige. Granite countertops. That chandelier. A dining room table that sat 8 even though only 4 of us ever used it. Kevin was already there when I arrived, sprawled on the leather sectional with a beer, looking pleased with himself. There she is, he said, the tenant. Kevin, my mother said, but she was smiling. I set the wine I'd brought on the counter, something nice, because I had money and taste, even if they didn't notice, and sat down. Dinner was the usual performance. My mother talked about her book club. My father complained about his golf game. Kevin told a long, boring story about closing a deal that I could tell he was embellishing because the numbers didn't make sense. Then he turned to me. So how's the apartment search going? He asked, all faux concern. I'm not apartment hunting. Oh, I thought Mom said. Mom's been sending me listings, I said evenly. I haven't asked her to. Well, you're gonna need something, right? Since the rent went up. He took a sip of beer, smirking. Maybe if you'd chosen a real career, you wouldn't need to rent from Mom and Dad. My mother made a soft sound, like she was going to defend me, but she didn't. My father cut his steak. I looked at Kevin, at his off-the-rack button-down and his leased Audi and his entire mediocre existence that our parents had gold-plated with their praise, and I wanted to tell him exactly what I made, exactly what my portfolio was worth, exactly how far above him I'd climbed while they were all watching him tread water and calling it swimming. Instead, I said, "How's your 401k doing?" His smile faltered. "Fine. You maxing out your contributions." That's not really. Because at your age, you should be prioritizing retirement savings. Compound interest, you know. My father perked up. Emma's right, Kev, are you contributing? And just like that, the attention swung away from me. Kevin fumbled through some half-answer about employer matching while I ate my potatoes and felt absolutely nothing. But then my mother said it, the thing that flipped the switch. "Oh, Emma, before I forget, we're having the house appraised next week." I looked up. Which house? The Maple property, yours. She waved her hand. Just for tax purposes, the appraiser might need to come inside, so make sure it's tidy, okay? Why do you need it appraised for taxes? Just routine stuff. Financial planning. You wouldn't understand, it's boring. But I did understand. I understood exactly. You don't appraise a property you've owned for a decade just for taxes. You appraise it when you're refinancing. Or selling. Or when the bank asks you to prove it's worth what you say it's worth because you're behind on payments and they're trying to figure out if foreclosing is worth their time. I smiled. Sure, Mom, I'll make sure it's clean. That night, I sat in my car in their driveway for 10 minutes before driving away, just thinking. Then I went home, opened my laptop, and pulled up the county assessor's website. Public records are a beautiful thing when you know how to read them. I entered the address for 1247 Maple Avenue. My house. Their house. The property they'd been renting to me for 3 years while using words like charity and helping you out. The record loaded. Purchase price, 2013, $187,000. First mortgage, $160,000. Refinance, 2016, $175,000. Refinance, 2019, $189,000. Current estimated value, $210,000. They'd pulled equity out, twice, and now they owed almost as much as the place was worth. I checked the payment history, nothing unusual, current. Then I searched the address of the house I was sitting in front of. The 4-bedroom McMansion with the chandelier and the granite and the mortgage they'd always implied didn't exist. Owner, Twin Oak Properties, LLC. They didn't own this house. They rented *it. I actually laughed, just once, sharp and bitter, alone in my car. They were renting a house to me while renting the house they lived in, and they'd leveraged the property I paid for to fund the lifestyle they performed, and now they were raising my rent to cover the gap. And they'd framed it as a lesson in *respect*. I drove home, poured a glass of wine, sat on my saggy couch surrounded by the furniture I owned in the house they owned, and opened my own financial records. Duplex in Cleveland, $340 month positive cash flow. Condo in Phoenix, $890 month positive cash flow. Single family in Austin, $615 month positive cash flow. Stock portfolio, $87,000. Savings, $61,000. Checking, $14,000. Retirement accounts, $120,000. Total liquid assets, approximately $140,000. Total net worth, factoring in equity, just over $400,000. I was 31 years old, and I was worth nearly $500,000, and my family thought I needed to be taught how to budget. Something in me went still, cold, clear. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Diane Park's number. Diane and I had met at a real estate investment conference 2 years ago. She was a real estate attorney who specialized in commercial acquisitions and had a reputation for being ruthless in the most elegant way possible. We'd stayed in touch, mostly networking, occasionally drinks when she was in town. I texted her, hypothetically, if I wanted to buy a property out from under someone who's over-leveraged and behind on payments. What's the play? She replied in 4 minutes, call me. We talked for an hour. Why do you want to do this? She asked, after I'd explained the situation. I looked around my living room, at the water heater I'd replaced, the floors I'd cleaned, the life I'd built in the margins of their contempt. Because I'm tired of being small in their story, I said, and because they're about to learn what respect actually costs. Okay, Diane said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Let's go to work. Diane didn't waste time. Within 2 days, she'd pulled a full financial history on both properties, the one I lived in and the one my parents lived in. She had contacts at title companies, county offices, and apparently half the property management firms in the state. Your instincts were right, she said over coffee that Saturday. She'd brought a folder. Actual physical documents, printed and tabbed, because Diane believed that serious business required paper you could touch. She slid the first document across the table. 1247 Maple. Purchased 2013 for $187K. Mortgaged at $160K, $30 year fixed. Refinanced twice, 2016 and 2019. They pulled out equity both times. Current loan balance is $189,000. The property's worth maybe $210K in the current market, probably less given the condition and the neighborhood trend. I scan the numbers. They're underwater if the market dips even 5%. Correct, and look at this. She pulled out another sheet. Payment history. They've been paying interest only since the last refi. No principal. The monthly payment is $11,340. I blinked. I've been paying them $1,200 a month, now $1,700. So they've been pocketing the difference and using your rent to service the debt on a property they've borrowed against twice. Diane's smile was sharp. But it gets better. She opened another tab. The house they live in, 4782 Ridgemont Court, owned by Twin Oak Properties. Your parents have been tenants there for 6 years. Rent is $2,400 a month. And according to my contact at Twin Oak, she leaned in, they're currently 3 months behind. My stomach dropped, not from sympathy, from the thrill of watching the pattern complete itself. There's a notice of default filed 2 weeks ago, Diane continued. Twin Oak's been patient, but they're a corporate landlord. They don't stay patient forever. I'd guess your parents have 60, maybe 90 days before eviction proceedings start. That's why they raised my rent, I said quietly. They're trying to plug the gap. Almost certainly, Diane sat back. They're juggling, badly. And here's the kicker, they've been claiming your rental income on their taxes, but I'd bet good money they haven't been reporting maintenance expenses accurately. If they're doing the work themselves or making you pay for repairs, that's a problem. And if they've entered your property without proper notice, that's a lease violation you could sue over. I thought about every time my mother had let herself in, every repair I'd paid for, every boundary I'd let them cross because they were my asterisk parents, and I'd been taught that pushing back made me ungrateful. I want to hurt them, I said, not loud, not dramatic, just true. Diane didn't flinch, legally. However it needs to happen. She nodded slowly. You have 2 options. 1, you could buy the property you're living in. Force a sale, take over the mortgage, become their creditor. It's clean, it's personal, and they'd hate it. Or, her smile widened, you could buy the property they're living in. I stared at her. Twin Oak is a mid-sized corporate landlord. They've got maybe 200 properties in their portfolio. They hate dealing with problem tenants, and your parents definitely qualify now. If someone approached them with a clean offer, cash or fast financing, take the property and the headache off their hands, they'd listen. I'd become my parents' landlord. You would. They'd lose their minds. They would. I picked up my coffee, put it down. My hands weren't shaking, but they wanted to. How much would it cost? Diane pulled out another document. Twin Oak bought the property in 2017 for $340K. It's probably worth $410K now, maybe $425K. But they're motivated. I'd guess they'd take $385K just to move it fast and clean. I did the math in my head. Down payment, closing costs, repairs, property management fees. I can do it, I said. I know you can, but Emma, Diane's voice shifted, gentler. This isn't just a real estate play. This is your family. If you do this, there's no going back. They'll never forgive you. They've never seen me, I said. There's nothing to go back to. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, let me make some calls. It took Diane 3 days to get a meeting with the VP of Asset Management at Twin Oak Properties. His name was Marcus Chen. I'd met him once, briefly, at a conference the year before, one of those 5-minute conversations at a networking mixer that you forget about until you need it. Diane made the introduction via email, framing it as a portfolio expansion opportunity. She didn't mention my parents, didn't mention the default, just said I was a cash-ready investor looking for a single-family property in a stable neighborhood, preferably one with an existing tenant in place. Marcus replied in 2 hours, "Let's talk." We met at his office on a Thursday afternoon. Diane came with me, all business in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my first car. Marcus was younger than I expected, maybe 40, sharp-eyed, the kind of guy who'd built his career on knowing exactly what every property in his portfolio was worth and what it would cost to get rid of the ones that weren't performing. "Diane says you're looking for a buy-and-hold investment," he said, skipping the small talk. "Something turnkey." "Ideally," I said. "I've got 3 rentals already, all out of state. I want something local, easier to manage." "Smart." He pulled up a spreadsheet on his laptop. "I've got a few options in your price range. What are you thinking budget-wise?" $350 to $400, I said. "Maybe a little more for the right property." He scrolled, clicked, frowned. "Actually," he said slowly, "I might have something. It's not officially on the market yet, but hold on." He pulled up a file. I watched the address populate on the screen, 4782 Ridgemont Court. My parents' house. 4-bed, 3-bath, built in 2008. We've owned it for 6 years. Good neighborhood, good bones. Current tenants, long-term lease. "Why sell?" Diane asked, perfectly casual. Marcus hesitated. "The tenants have been inconsistent lately. We'd rather move the asset than deal with an eviction process. Takes time, costs money, and it's a headache." "How inconsistent?" I asked. 3 months behind. We've sent notices, they keep promising to catch up, but," he shrugged. "We're a corporation, not a charity. If someone wants to take the property and the tenant situation off our hands, we're open to it." "What are you asking?" "We'd listed at $415, but for a quick cash close, I could probably get approval at $385. I glanced at Diane. She gave me the smallest nod. "I'd need to see it," I said. "Of course, I can schedule a showing." "I've seen it before," I said. "I know the neighborhood. If the inspection comes back clean, I'm interested." Marcus blinked. That was fast. "I don't waste time on properties I'm not serious about." He smiled. The kind of smile that said he liked doing business with people who didn't jerk him around. "Let me send you the details. If you're serious, we can move quickly." We shook hands. I walked out of that office with my heart pounding and my face completely calm. Diane waited until we were in the parking lot. "You're really doing this," she said. "I'm really doing this. Emma, once you sign, you own their home. You control whether they have a place to live." I looked up at the sky, clear, blue, indifferent. "They raised my rent to teach me respect," I said. "I'm going to teach them what power actually looks like." Diane pulled out her phone. "I'll draft the offer." Offer went in on a Monday morning. Diane structured it through Meridian Holdings, the LLC I'd set up 3 years ago when I bought my first property. My name appeared nowhere on the purchase agreement, just the company, represented by legal counsel, offering $385,000 cash equivalent with a 15-day due diligence period and a 30-day close. Marcus called Diane that afternoon. "We're accepting the offer. My bosses are thrilled to move it this fast." I was in a meeting when she texted me. I excused myself, walked to the bathroom, and stood in a stall reading the message over and over. "Offer accepted. You're buying your parents' house." I looked at myself in the mirror. I thought I'd feel something dramatic, triumph, maybe, or guilt, or that sick rush of adrenaline you get before you do something you can't take back. Instead, I just felt clear, like I'd been looking through foggy glass my entire life and someone had finally wiped it clean. The inspection happened the following week. I couldn't risk my parents seeing me, but the inspector sent his report within 48 hours. Roof was fine. Foundation was fine. HVAC needed servicing but was functional. A few minor issues, nothing that would kill the deal. I approved the repairs and moved forward. Diane handled the financing. I could have paid cash, but she advised against it. Better to leverage the bank's money, keep my liquid assets free, treat this like any other investment even though we both knew it wasn't. I got a mortgage for $308,000 at 4.2% interest. Put down $77,000. Closing costs ran another $8,000. The closing was scheduled for a Wednesday at 2 p.m. at a title company downtown that my parents would never have reason to visit. I sat at a conference table with Diane on one side and a tired-looking title officer on the other, signing page after page after page. My hand cramped halfway through and I had to pause, shake it out, keep going. Seller disclosures, mortgage documents, deed of trust, promissory note, title insurance, the HOA agreement. Every signature felt like a lock clicking shut. The title officer slid the final document across the table. And this is your copy of the recorded deed. Congratulations, Ms. Pearson. You're officially the owner of 4782 Ridgemont Court. I held the paper in both hands. My name, well, Meridian Holdings, LLC, but asterisk my asterisk company, listed as the legal owner of the property my parents lived in. Thank you, I said. Diane walked me to my car. We didn't say anything until we were standing in the parking garage, the echo of our footsteps bouncing off concrete. You okay? She asked. I own my parents' house. You do? They have no idea. Not yet. I laughed. It came out strange and sharp. What the hell am I doing, Diane? You're enforcing boundaries, she said calmly. With a deed and a mortgage, now come on. We've got a property manager to brief. Clara Vega came highly recommended by 3 different people in Diane's network. She was 52, had been managing residential properties for 20 years, and had a reputation for taking exactly 0 shit from problem tenants. We met her at a coffee shop near her office the day after closing. So, Clara said, stirring sugar into her coffee with the brisk efficiency of someone who didn't waste time on anything, Diane says you've got a tenant situation that needs a firm hand. That's one way to put it, I said. I explained the situation. Not all of it. I didn't mention that the tenants were my parents, not yet, but enough. Long-term tenants, currently 3 months behind on rent, history of making promises they didn't keep. New owner, me wanted to retain them if possible, but only under revised terms. What kind of terms? Clara asked. Market rate rent, mandatory autopay, formal notice requirements for any landlord entry, late fees that actually matter, and I hesitated. I want everything documented, every interaction, every payment, every violation, paper trail for anything that might end up in court. Clara's eyes narrowed. You expecting this to end up in court? I'm expecting them to fight, I said. I want to be ready. She nodded slowly. I can do that. My fee is 8% of collected rent, plus hourly for any legal prep or eviction proceedings. I don't play favorites and I don't do favors. I follow the lease and the law. That work for you? That's exactly what I need. Good, she pulled out a tablet. Let's talk terms. We spent the next hour drafting the new lease addendum. Clara walked me through every clause, every implication, making sure I understood what I was doing. Rent increase from $2,400 to $2,850. Market rate for the area, completely defensible. Late fees, 5% per day after the 5th of the month, cumulative. Auto-pay enrollment, mandatory within 7 business days. Notice for entry, 24 hours in writing except for emergencies. Lease violations, formal notice required with photographic documentation. You want to add anything about the back rent? Clara asked. I thought about it. 3 months at $2,400 was $7,200 plus late fees. A huge number, enough to bury them. Give them 30 days to cure the default, I said. If they pay the back rent plus fees within 30 days, we'll proceed with the new terms. If they don't, we start eviction proceedings. That's generous, Clara said. I want them to have a choice, I said. I want them to know I gave them one. Clara smiled. It wasn't warm. You've done this before. Not like this. We scheduled the lease review meeting for the following Thursday. Clara would present it as standard new owner protocol. Just a formality, nothing to worry about. Please attend so we can review the updated terms and get everyone on the same page. She sent the meeting request that afternoon. Formal email, professional language, CCing Diane as legal counsel. My parents replied within an hour. My father wrote, "We'll be there. Looking forward to meeting the new owner and resolving any confusion about our account." I read that line, asterisk, resolving any confusion, asterisk, and wondered what story they'd told themselves. That the missed payments were a mistake, that this was all a misunderstanding, that they were still good tenants, still in control, still the ones with power. They think they're going to charm their way out of this, I told Diane over the phone that night. Let them think that, she said. Overconfidence is a gift. The meeting was set for 3 p.m. on Thursday. I had 9 days to wait. I didn't plan to start enforcing boundaries with my parents. It just happened. The Thursday after closing, my mother texted me, "Hi, honey. Can you send June's rent a few days early? It would really help with our cash flow red." I stared at that message for a full minute. Our cash flow. The cash flow of the people who'd raised my rent by 40% to teach me a lesson. The cash flow they were managing by being 3 months behind on their own rent. I typed, "Rent is due on the 1st. I'll pay on the 1st. She replied immediately, "I know, but it would just be easier if." "The lease says the 1st. I'll pay on the 1st. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Fine. I felt something shift in my chest. Something that had been clenched tight for years, starting to loosen. 2 days later, my mother showed up at my door unannounced. I was working from home, on a video call with a client, when I heard her key in the lock. I muted my mic. "Mom, I'm working." "I know, I just need to check the furnace real quick. I'll only be a second." "No." She froze halfway through the door. "What?" I stood up, walked over, and stood in the doorway. "You need to give me 24 hours notice before entering. It's in the lease." "Emma, don't be ridiculous. We own this house." "And I'm the tenant. 24 hours notice. That's the law." Her face did something complicated. Confusion, then annoyance, then something harder. "I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but I don't appreciate this attitude." "It's not attitude. It's the lease you asked me to sign." "We're your parents. Then treat me like an adult tenant and give me notice." We stood there for a beat, her on the step, me blocking the door. I watched her recalibrate, trying to figure out who I was and why I wasn't folding. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll come back tomorrow. Send me a text with the reason for entry and the time you'll be arriving." She left without answering. I closed the door, locked it, and went back to my call. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. That night, I was sitting on my porch with a glass of wine, something I'd started doing in the evenings, just to have a few minutes of quiet, when my parents pulled into their driveway. Their house, the house I now owned. I could hear them arguing before they even got out of the car. The windows were down, my mother's voice, sharp and frustrated. "Don't know what's gotten into her. She's acting like we're strangers." "She's just pushing back, Lynn. It's what we wanted, right? Independence." "This isn't independence. This is disrespect. I'm her mother, asterisk, Richard. I should be able to check my own property without her getting bratty about it. Maybe we should non-renew her lease." My mother's voice was cold now, decided. "Teach her what it's really like out there. Let her scramble for an apartment and see how much landlords outside the family care about her schedule." I went very still. My father said something I couldn't hear. My mother's reply was clear. "I'm serious. She needs a reality check. We've been too soft." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app, hit record, set it on the porch railing. They kept talking for another minute, something about teaching me a real lesson, about how I'd come crawling back, about how maybe this was exactly what I needed. Then they went inside. I stopped the recording, saved it, titled it, Retaliatory Eviction Discussion 523. Then I texted Clara, they're going to try to evict me. Let's move up the timeline. She replied, on it. The notice to non-renew arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week before the scheduled meeting with Clara. It was printed on the same cream cardstock as the rent increase letter, folded in crisp thirds, formal and impersonal. Dear Emma asterisk, after careful consideration, we have decided not to renew your lease agreement when it expires on August 31st. This letter serves as your 60-day notice of non-renewal as required by your lease terms. We hope this experience has been valuable in teaching you about tenant-landlord relationships and the responsibilities that come with renting property. We wish you the best in finding new accommodations. The word asterisk responsibilities was underlined. At the bottom in my mother's handwriting, we know this seems tough, but we truly believe this is what's best for your growth. Love, Mom and Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I took a picture of it and sent it to Diane with the message, evidence of retaliatory eviction. She replied, perfect. Don't respond, don't argue. Just acknowledge receipt in writing, nothing more. I drafted a response email, short, professional. Receipt acknowledged. I will vacate by August 31st as requested. I didn't mention lawyers, didn't mention rights, didn't mention that I'd recorded them planning this on my porch. I just complied. My mother called 20 minutes later. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Hi honey, I just wanted to make sure you got the letter and, well, I know it probably feels harsh, but your father and I really think this is for the best. You're smart and capable and it's time for you to really stand on your own. Call me back. Love you. I deleted it. Kevin texted an hour after that. Heard about the lease thing. That sucks. But hey, maybe it's the kick in the pants you need person mail. Let me know if you need help moving. I blocked his number. Then I opened the folder on my laptop, the one I'd been building for weeks now, and I reviewed everything one more time. Photos of every time they'd entered without notice. Records of every repair I'd paid for that they should have covered. The recording of them planning to evict me for asserting my rights. Proof that they'd raised my rent above market rate while behind on their own. The rent increase letter with respect underlined twice. The non-renewal notice with responsibilities underlined. Everything documented, everything dated, everything defensible. I texted Clara, they served notice, I accepted. What now? Now we let them think they won, she replied. Meeting is still on for Thursday, you're still coming. As what? As the property owner, who's about to read them their new terms. I started packing that night. Not because I was actually leaving. I'd already put a deposit down on a condo across town, a place I was buying outright, a place that would be mine asterisk with no mortgages and no parents and no compromises. But I wanted them to see boxes, wanted them to drive by and see me loading my car, wanted them to think they'd won. Because the fall would be so much farther that way. Diane came over on Wednesday night, the night before the meeting, with a dossier she'd prepared. It was 2 inches thick, tabbed and organized, every piece of evidence we'd collected presented in clean, legal language. This is overkill, she said, setting it on my kitchen counter. You probably won't need half of it, but if they try to fight, if they claim ignorance or play victim, you have everything. I flipped through it, saw my own life reflected back in documents and timestamps, every slight, every boundary crossed, every time they'd made me feel small, now transformed into evidence. Thank you, I said. Are you ready for this? I thought about the question, really thought about it. Was I ready to sit across from my parents and watch their faces when they learned the truth? Was I ready to become the villain in their story? Was I ready to burn this bridge and salt the earth? Yes, I said. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was anxious, not because I was afraid. Because I was counting down the hours until they learned exactly who I was. until the daughter they'd underestimated for 31 years showed them what she'd built while they weren't looking. Until respect stopped being something they demanded and started being something they had no choice but to give. I set 3 alarms. Laid out my clothes, the charcoal suit I wore to closings, the one that meant business. Made coffee at 5 a.m., even though the meeting wasn't until 3 p.m. Sat on my couch, in the house I'd be leaving in 60 days, in the life I was about to completely rebuild, and I waited. At 2:45, I got in my car and drove to my parents' house. The house I owned. The house where everything was about to change. Clara's car was already in the driveway when I arrived. A sensible Honda, spotless and professional. She was standing on the porch with her leather portfolio, checking her phone. She looked up when I parked on the street, gave me a small nod. I nodded back and stayed in my car for 30 seconds, breathing. Then I got out and walked up the driveway I'd walked up 1,000 times before, for birthdays and holidays and Sunday dinners, where I played my role as the daughter who didn't quite measure up. Not anymore. "Ready?" Clara asked quietly. "Yes." She rang the doorbell, used the doorbell, even though my parents always just walked into my place. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father answered. He was wearing khakis and a polo shirt, his meeting casual outfit, the one he thought made him look successful. His smile was warm, confident. "You must be Clara," he said, extending his hand. "Richard Pearson, come on in." "Thank you." Clara shook his hand, all business. "And you've met Emma, of course." My father's eyes landed on me. Confusion flickered across his face. "Emma, what are you doing here?" "Ms. Vega asked me to attend," I said evenly. "Something about tenant representation." "Oh, well, I guess that's fine." He stepped aside to let us in. My mother was already seated at the dining room table, the one that sat 8. She'd put out water glasses and coasters, like this was a social call. She smiled when she saw Clara, but the smile faltered when she saw me. "Honey, why?" "I'll explain everything," Clara said smoothly. "Shall we sit?" We sat, Clara at one end of the table. My parents on one side, perched in their chairs like this was a formality they'd get through quickly. Me on the other side, hands folded in my lap, silent. Clara opened her portfolio, pulled out the first document. "Thank you both for meeting with me today," she began. "As you know, Twin Oak Properties recently sold this property. I've been retained by the new owner to manage the transition and review your lease terms." "Right," my father said. "We got the notice. We're happy to meet the new owner, talk through any concerns." "The owner won't be attending in person," Clara said, "but they've authorized me to act on their behalf." My mother leaned forward slightly. "Is there a problem?" "There are some items that need to be addressed." Clara slid a document across the table. "First, your account status. You're currently 14 days late on this month's rent, and you have an outstanding balance of 3 prior months. That's a total of $9,600 in back rent, plus late fees of $1,440. Total amount due, $11,040. The silence was immediate and thick. My father's face went red. "Now hold on, we've been in communication with Twin Oak about that. We had an agreement." "Any agreements with the previous owner aren't binding on the new owner," Clara said calmly. "However, the new owner is willing to work with you. They're offering a 30-day cure period. If you pay the full outstanding balance within 30 days, you can remain as tenants under revised lease terms." "Revised terms." My mother's voice was tight. Clara pulled out another document. This one had more pages. "The new owner has reviewed the property and your lease history. They're proposing the following amendments." She began reading. Her voice was steady, clinical, completely unmoved by the way my parents' faces were changing. "Rent will increase from $2,400 per month to $2,850 per month, effective July 1st. This reflects current market rates for comparable properties in this area." "That's," my father started. Clara didn't stop. "Late fees will accrue at a rate of 5% per day after the 5th of each month, cumulative. All payments must be made via automatic bank draft. Enrollment in autopay is mandatory and must be completed within 7 business days of signing this amendment. My mother was shaking her head. This is outrageous. The landlord reserves the right to inspect the property with 24 hours written notice, as required by state law. Unauthorized modifications to the property, including but not limited to paint, fixtures, or structures, must be approved in writing before implementation. Clara slid another sheet across the table. The property inspection conducted last week identified several lease violations. Unauthorized paint in the primary bedroom, lilac, according to the report. A storage shed installed in the backyard without landlord approval. And, she glanced at a note, 17 nail holes in the living room walls from picture hanging, which exceeds the limits specified in your lease. My father's mouth opened and closed. We've been here for 6 years. We've taken care of this place. Which is why the landlord is willing to waive the violation fees if you agree to remedy the issues within 60 days, Clara said. Otherwise, the fees total $1,200. My mother's hands were flat on the table now, fingers spread. We've been model tenants. We've always paid. You're currently 4 months behind on rent. We've had some temporary cash flow issues. Which is your prerogative to manage, Clara said. But it doesn't obligate the landlord to extend terms beyond what's legally required. My father's voice dropped into that reasoning tone, the one he used when he thought he could logic his way into control. Look, we understand there's a new owner, new policies, that's fine, but these terms they're harsh. We'd like to speak with the owner directly, work something out. We're reasonable people. The owner has been made aware of your request, Clara said. They've declined. Well, that's just, my mother's voice was rising now. This is our home. We've been here for 6 years. We have rights. You can't just come in here and... You have exactly the rights specified in your lease, Clara interrupted, still perfectly calm. No more, no less, and your lease is currently in default. She pulled out another document. This one had a red border. This is a formal notice to cure or quit. You have 30 days to pay the outstanding balance and sign the lease amendment. If you fail to do either, the owner will begin eviction proceedings. The word eviction hit the room like a slap. My mother's face went white. You can't. We've never been evicted. We've never. Then I suggest you cure the default. My father was staring at the papers now, really looking at them, and I could see the exact moment the reality started sinking in. His hands picked up the lease amendment. His eyes scanned the terms. This rent increase, he said slowly, this is almost 20%. 18.75%, Clara corrected, which is within legal limits and reflects market rate. We can't afford this. The words came out strangled. Quiet, and I watched my mother's head snap toward him, her expression a mix of fury and panic because he just admitted weakness in front of strangers. Richard. We can't Linda. His voice was hollow now. We're already behind. We've got Emma's place to deal with. We can't. Actually, Clara said, that's the other item I need to address. She pulled out a new folder. This one had my rental property's address on the tab. The owner of 1247 Maple Avenue has also filed a complaint regarding your conduct as landlords. My parents both stared at her. What does that have to do with this? My mother asked. The owner of this property, Clara tapped the table, is aware that you've been supplementing your income through rental property ownership. They're also aware that you recently attempted to evict your tenant at that property without cause, in apparent retaliation for the tenant asserting their legal rights. My father's eyes cut to me, then back to Clara. How do you? The tenant filed a formal complaint, Clara said. Notice of entry violations, retaliatory eviction, rent increases above market rate. The owner of that property has decided not to renew your lease here unless you immediately cease all retaliatory conduct and comply with these terms. Wait, my mother's voice was shaking now. Wait, the owner of Asterisk this house knows about. How is that even? Who the hell is the owner? My father demanded. Clara closed her folder, sat back, looked directly at me. Ms. Pearson, would you like to respond? Every eye in the room turned to me. I'd imagined this moment for weeks, played it out in my head 100 different ways. Sometimes I was cold and cutting. Sometimes I was furious. Sometimes I gave them a speech about everything they'd done, every wound they'd left. But sitting there, looking at their confused, frightened faces, I found I didn't need any of that. I just needed the truth. I'm the owner, I said quietly. Silence. My mother blinked. What? I bought this house 4 weeks ago, I said. I also own the house you've been trying to evict me from, the one I've been paying rent on in full, on time, for 3 years while you used the income to cover your mortgage here, the mortgage you're now defaulting on. My father's face had gone gray. You, how? I'm a senior financial analyst at a commercial real estate firm, I said. I've been investing in property for 5 years. I have 3 rental properties, a stock portfolio, and enough liquid assets to close on this house in 30 days. My mother was shaking her head like she could physically reject the information. That's not. You don't have that kind of money. Yes, I do. My voice was steady, calm. I've had it for years, you just never asked. Emma, my father's voice cracked. Why would you? You raised my rent by 40% to teach me respect, I said. You entered my home without permission. You lectured me about financial responsibility while you were 3 months behind on your own rent. You tried to evict me for asserting my legal rights as a tenant, and you framed all of it as doing me a asterisk favor asterisk. We were trying to help you, my mother started. No, I cut her off. You were trying to control me, and when I stopped letting you, you tried to punish me. I stood up, looked down at them sitting at their oversized table in their rented house with their underwater mortgage and their performance of success. I'm not your tenant anymore, Mom. I'm your landlord. And if you want to stay in this house, you're going to show asterisk me some respect. My mother's face crumpled. For a second I thought she might cry, but instead she went somewhere harder, angrier. How asterisk dare you, she hissed. We're your parents, asterisk, Emma. We gave you everything. You gave Kevin everything, I said. You gave me student loans and lectures, and I took them and I built something anyway. Something you never bothered to notice because you were too busy telling me I wasn't good enough. That's not, we never said. You didn't have to say it, Mom. You underlined it, twice. I picked up my bag, looked at Clara. I'll leave you to finish the details, I said. Clara nodded. I'll send you the summary. I walked to the door. My father stood up. Emma, wait, we need to talk about this. You have 30 days to pay the back rent and sign the new terms, I said without turning around. After that, Clara will file for eviction. Those are your choices. Talk to her, not me. You can't just, you're really going to throw us out. I turned back, looked at him, at his expensive watch and his Tesla keys and his entire carefully constructed image that was crumbling in real time. I'm not throwing you out, I said. I'm charging you market rent and expecting you to follow the lease. You know, teaching you responsibility. I left before either of them could respond. Clara stayed behind to finish the meeting. I sat in my car at the end of the street and waited, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. My phone buzzed. A text from Kevin, what the fuck did you do? I deleted it without responding. 15 minutes later, Clara emerged. She walked to her car, got in, and drove down the street, pulled up next to me and rolled down her window. They're in shock, she said. Your mother tried to argue. Your father just stared at the wall. I left the documents. They have 30 days to respond. Do you think they'll pay? Honestly, I don't know. They're in deep, but they don't have a lot of options. I nodded. How are you doing? Clara asked. I thought about it, tried to name what I was feeling. I don't know, I said. Ask me in a few days. She smiled. You did good in there, clean, professional. You didn't give them anything to use against you. Thanks. She drove away. I sat there for another 10 minutes looking at the house. Then I went home. The next 72 hours were a blur of silence and noise. My parents didn't call, didn't text, radio silence. Kevin called 6 times, left voicemails that started concerned and ended furious. I didn't listen to them. Diane checked in twice a day, making sure I was okay, reminding me that what I'd done was legal and justified, and exactly what they deserved. I went to work, had meetings, analyzed spreadsheets, pretended everything was normal. On Saturday morning, Clara called. "They're paying," she said. I was in the middle of making coffee. I set the mug down. "What?" "Your father called me at 8 a.m. They're paying the back rent. All of it, including fees. And they're signing the lease amendment." "How?" "I didn't ask, but they're wiring the funds Monday morning. I'll send you confirmation when it clears." I sat down at my kitchen table, stared at the wall. "Okay," I said. "You don't sound happy." "I don't know what I am." "That's normal," Clara said gently. "This was never just about money." No, it wasn't. The payment cleared on Tuesday. $11,040 transferred from my father's account to the property management account Clara had set up. The lease amendment was signed and returned by DocuSign that same day. Both of their signatures, neat and binding. I stared at the notification email for a long time. They'd complied, they'd paid, they were staying. And I'd won. So why did I feel so empty? 2 weeks later, Kevin sent a text that got through before I could block his new number. "Mom took out a loan against her car to pay your ransom. Dad borrowed from his 401k. Hope you're proud of yourself." I wasn't proud, but I wasn't sorry either. I responded once. They had the option to negotiate. They chose to raise my rent instead. Actions have consequences. Then I blocked the number. My parents moved to autopay. Rent came in on the 1st of every month, exactly on time, no communication necessary. I never visited, never called, never drove by. Clara sent me monthly reports. Everything was current, no violations, no complaints. They'd become model tenants. And I'd become exactly what they'd tried to teach me to fear, a landlord who didn't care about their excuses. I started packing my rental in earnest in mid-July. The condo I'd bought was ready, a 2-bedroom unit on the 8th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city. No landlord, no mortgage, just mine. I hired movers, didn't ask my family for help, didn't want it. On my last day at 1247 Maple Avenue, I did a final walkthrough, took pictures of every room, clean and empty, documented that I'd left it better than I'd found it. I left the keys on the counter with a note. Property returned in good condition. Security deposit can be returned to the address on file. I never got the deposit back. I didn't chase it. It wasn't about the money. I drove away from that house, and I didn't look back. Clara found new tenants within a week, a young couple, mid-20s, just starting out. I approved them immediately and set the rent at $1,200. Fair rate, fair terms, the way it should have always been. It's been 6 months since the meeting. I'm sitting in my condo right now, coffee in hand, looking out at the skyline as the sun comes up over the city. The view never gets old. My parents are still living in the house I own, still paying rent on time, still, as far as I know, performing their version of success for their friends and neighbors. We haven't spoken. Kevin sent one more message about 2 months ago, a long, rambling thing about family and forgiveness and how I was tearing everyone apart. I read it once and archived it without responding. Diane still checks in, takes me to lunch once a month, tells me I'm one of her favorite clients because I have a spine. Clara sends her reports like clockwork. Everything's current, everything's fine. My portfolio now includes 5 properties. The promotion I got in August came with a title change, principal analyst, and a salary that would have made my 22-year-old self weep with relief. I'm doing well, better than well. but I'd be lying if I said this didn't cost me something. There's a grief in it, a specific kind of loss that comes from realizing the family you wanted was never the family you had. That the people who were supposed to see you were looking right through you the entire time. I've been in therapy for 3 months, working through it, learning that boundaries aren't cruelty, that protecting yourself isn't the same as being heartless, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. My therapist asked me last week if I regretted it. I thought about it for a long time. No, I said finally. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret doing it. Because here's what I learned. Respect isn't something you beg for, it's something you enforce. Documentation isn't paranoia, it's power. Every text, every payment, every boundary violation I recorded became proof that I wasn't imagining things, that I wasn't the problem. Financial independence is the ultimate boundary. The people who control your money control your choices. The moment I stopped needing them, everything changed. And sometimes the people who demand you prove yourself are standing on the shakiest ground. My parents spent years telling me I wasn't responsible, wasn't successful, wasn't enough, while they were drowning in debt and bad decisions. Projection is a hell of a drug. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship again. Some bridges, once burned, don't rebuild. But I'm okay with that, because I have something better than their approval now. I have autonomy. I have clarity. I have a life I built with my own hands, and nobody can take it from me. And I have this story. This ridiculous, painful, satisfying story about the time my parents tried to teach me respect and learned exactly who they'd been underestimating for 31 years. If you're listening to this and it feels familiar, if you've ever been told you're not good enough by people who never bothered to really see you, I want you to know you're not alone. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Tell me your story if you want to. This community is full of people who get it. And if this story felt satisfying or validating, or just gave you that little hit of justice you needed today, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Tap the little hype button thing that apparently helps with the algorithm, because YouTube doesn't respect me either, but you can prove it wrong. I used to think respect was something I had to earn. Now I know it's something I enforce. And I'm never giving that power away again. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.